try to take the role.
I'm not gonna turn it
Do you
down.
drink coffee?
No. You?
Yes. I just didn't know if you've ever been to Mug Swigs.
I'm not a coffee person.
Somebody was getting it.
Because you can sit it, like it does, it sits at events and stuff, and you can have information on there. I mean, it serves a purpose. And then it's all that's on right.
You're right. You take it, so everybody else in the while.
Yeah.
And the record, correct.
It says stop.
Where do you live?
So Barberton.
Austin Estates, and literally like one every 10
There's
houses.
a list of stuff that we can apply for. We'll apply for I said,
My aunt and uncle live on Azalea, the Ben Merrick's. So we didn't go to, we should have went to Azalea.
even the ones I wasn't eligible for, make them say no.
Make them say, right.
I said, that's the
Yeah, I tell you what, it was like one every 10 houses. And I'm like,
I'm a client.
Make them say no.
I'm gonna fight with you.
oh my God.
But that way, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, because like over where we live on the corner of Jefferson and State. First one, no one goes down here. It's busy.
I'm going for it. Well, screw it.
Jefferson, we live like at the bottom of the hill basically, so no one ever comes to our house on that side either. And no one ever goes to
That'd be equipment today.
I mean, it's very like, he lived just like on my road too. It's very small.
She came in today. Okay. It was her thing for
Oh, right now. Like, yeah, please.
GoFundMe page. Yeah, and also special furniture.
Why, am I in trouble?
Thankfully,
I didn't look like a figure.
All right, we're going to begin in 30 seconds. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent. Council members, ensure that your microphones are turned on.
thankfully nobody was hurt. It was a big fire.
Yeah, but just put your name on these sheets so we can write it in.
You sell that. Just because you use it.
Just making it.
Mike and Todd.
All right, this evening is a committee of the whole meeting for Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, November 7th, 2022. Before we begin that meeting, I just want to make a note that we do have a special legislative meeting after the committee of the whole this evening. So I call this meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. And we will start off with street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order streets, sidewalks, and lighting. It is 6:01, Monday, November 7th. And members on my committee are myself as chair, Erica Bailey, and Shorter Griffin. All council members are here, along with guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we have no new legislation. Pending legislation, we have none. And miscellaneous discussion, I hope everybody has their leaf pickup schedule printed out right in front of their desk in case you get calls. And they've been out, I know that the schedule, they had started early, so apparently they had the patch crew working their area, and then they had leaf pickup, because I know they came down several streets already. So they will be picking up according to that schedule, and then according to weather, they will come back around. As long as the weather's nice, they'll keep picking up leaves. So I'll open it up to my committee for any miscellaneous discussion. None? From the body? Yes, Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Ms. Angeloff. If you guys remember, like a year ago, I brought up where the street sweeper, we can put some kind of notes on like a water bill or something. Remember that discussion last year?
Well, the street sweeper picks, they do sweep streets
Right.
that are curved streets.
Right.
So they'll push the leaves into a huge pile. So if you ever notice, if you go down any street, you see this huge pile of leaves. That, more than likely, was the street sweeper that pushed those leaves, and then they come with a a dump truck and a front end loader and pick up those leaves. Now, on streets that do not get this weekly streets pickup, street sweeper, I saw them do that the other day. They came down and with the front end loader and pushed all the leaves that the neighbors had gathered up and scooped it up and put it in the truck. You can also take the leaves down to a park, and I know Tuscarora Park, I'm not quite sure, Edgewood Park.
And McCafferty.
And McCafferty, and you can, dump them, or they have a section for loose leaves, they have a section for bag leaves too. So you can take your leaves down at that time. But the street sweeper, they're on schedule until usually December 8th or something of that sort, that they do, sweep the streets that are curbed.
Is there any way we can get some kind of like a notice for new residents? I had a gentleman just purchased a house on Orchard, and he got a ticket for not moving his car, but he did not know the street sweeper was coming
Well,
that day.
when you sign up for your water bill, they, I don't know if they still do that, they give out
We have
a new
version of
packet.
the packet.
Yeah.
If I'm in the office, I try to meet with them, but it's in the packet there.
It's in the
Street
packet.
sweeping schedule is,
Okay.
it's got a ward map, it's got all that stuff.
Is there a way we can do a reminder for them, like through the water bill or something?
They do put it in the paper, we have to publicly notify people that the street sweeper's starting, which is like May 15th and it ends, and with the leaf pickup too. So by law, we do put it in a paper, we can't knock on everybody's door. New residents, they do get that packet. That was something that planning and I started 30 years ago when I was working for the city, those new packets, and those are really nice. And if you're a renter, then it's your landlord's responsibility to let you know when the street pickup is and the snow plowing and when your trash is picked up. So I don't know, I don't even look at my water bill, so I don't even know if it was on the water bill.
How, this is going with the street, how often do they sweep, like on average, a street a year?
It's the curb streets.
Right.
And they do it from May till December,
Okay.
weather permitting. Now, if it's still not,
Every
it's
week?
every week.
Oh, okay, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
in some areas,
Some
it's been
areas.
every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because they had to add some
Yeah.
extra neighborhoods
Okay.
and
Like
what have
Ward
you.
2 and Ward 3, that flip-flops. One Sunday, it's Ward 3, the next week, it's Ward 2.
So it's not like a random every.
No, they have a schedule.
Oh, okay.
They've always had a schedule.
So it's not, okay.
Ward 5 is on Tuesday
Yeah.
nights.
Oh, okay.
Every week.
I think downtown 4th Street is, 4th area is what, third Wednesday? Maybe Wednesday, just like the trash. You
Yeah.
have a scheduled time.
Okay.
A scheduled date. And it's weather permitting, you might have people complain that their street normally gets swept and it didn't. Well, if it was raining.
Right.
Or storming or snowing, they're not gonna do that. So they start, is it still May till December, the street sweeper?
It actually ends right around November, about the time the leaves start.
About the time the leaves start?
Yeah,
Okay.
stop.
But they do,
But they're out though, they would be around.
So our
They still
second
push
shift, our second shift, which is typically our street sweeper, he actually is in a vac unit right now. So like you were stating, the streets that they push, so they have what they call a pusher, it's a modified snowplow, pushes the leaves to the end of the street. Well, once that's done and they've picked up, then he comes with the vac on second shift and vacuums
And
up.
cleans that.
Because the plow actually kind of, for lack of a better term, smears the
It does.
leaves down the street.
It sure does.
And so he comes with the vac and then kind of cleans everything up. So that's what he's doing now instead of street sweeping.
And Councilman Jaber, we do put things in the water bill. I don't recall last time it was in there.
Yeah.
And there's only some, even though the water bill, if you can picture it, there's a lot of white space. We're limited how many characters. It looks like there's plenty of room to put a message on there.
Just a
with
little
multiple
squiggly.
messages, but we're limited in the number of characters that you can put in.
Just like I said, that's the second time it's happened recently with a new tenant moving into my ward. They got a ticket and they're.
Well, he's not reading his packet then, so.
Yeah, he's not a new owner of the property. He's a tenant.
Pardon?
He's a tenant. He's not an owner
Oh,
of the
he's
property.
okay.
He's a renter.
Yeah,
So just,
well,
and I think recently, Mrs. Eisman, we've towed how many cars for the water bill? I mean, not the water street.
Well, and they do get warnings, first time they get a warning. And this, Mr. Jaber, I just have to explain to you, this has been a problem since I can recall way back when. I mean, it's always been, you didn't tell me, you didn't give me a warning, and, you know, usually around Lake Ann and everything. It's 2022, and it was in 1990, the same thing, the same problem. The tenant, I didn't know about it. Well, that's the landlord's responsibility to tell you. You know, we can't knock on every door and mail everything out to tenants. You know, their landlord has to have some responsibility. So it's the same thing that I say every year that I have said for 32 years. So it's the same thing. You know, when they get a warning, then they know that street sweeper's out. Don't park there. You know, and then they always give a warning out, and it's always listed in the paper that they'll warn you first. So that's the best that we can do. And I tell you what, they've been cleaning up those leaves. It's amazing to watch them. It really is. They work. They don't stop. They do a great job. They really, really do. Any other questions, Mr. Guerrero?
Thank you, Chair. Is that welcome packet something that they can download online? Is that available online?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of pieces of information, it's not all over the city, so we'll put stuff in there from the library, schools.
Once we have that, we can have it put on the council page too as well, like a quick link to that, once it's online.
And it's on the website too, the city's website, the street pickup, you know, the leaf pickup, the snow, the whole 9 yards. It's there. If you want to know when it's going to be picked up in your ward, go onto the website. That's what it's there for. So, any questions from the gallery? Mr. Best? No? All right, no more questions. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Bailey, second.
All right, second.
Mr. Griffin, and we are adjourned at 6:10 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Angeloff. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call to order the Environmental Health and Social Services Committee. It is Monday, November 7th at 6:10 p.m. We're in council chambers. All members are present, myself as chair, Mr. Jaber and Mrs. Angeloff. All other council members are present, and all others are as noted on my sheet. There is no new requested legislation. So I'm sorry, I've never had an appointment, so we just read it as an appointment? Okay. There is an appointment, a letter from Mayor Judge requesting confirmation of Mrs. Mary Jo Goss to sit on the Summit County Board of Health representing the city of Barberton. Her reappointment would start immediately, and everyone got a copy of her resume. Any remarks? No?
Yeah, Mrs. Gox has got a medical background, and she's very knowledgeable and has always shown an interest in what's best for the city of Barberton in her position.
And I'll say the same thing as you read number 1, 40 years career in healthcare. And she is a Barberton resident, and she has done a lot for this town.
Any other remarks? Yes.
Just real quick, she was appointed to this position back in January or February of this year. The individual resident who was there before her stepped down, the council appointed her. So the term is not up. Well, the term is up on the Summit County Health side, not on the city. That's why it's coming back.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have no, well, I'm sorry, I'll open it up for miscellaneous discussion. Yes.
I just wanted to thank you for sending us the MAD notes.
Yeah. There is another meeting on Thursday, so you'll be getting, it takes a couple weeks for the notes to come out, so you'll be getting that again.
Yeah, I just want to say they were very thorough. I appreciate that.
Great, great. Yes.
I understand that if anybody knows anyone in the Norton area that would like to be on the DAC board, they're begging for somebody to step up for that. Because
They have to be a city official.
They-
Oh, you're saying the board?
Yeah.
No,
The
not the DAC, the MAD.
The MAD.
The DAC, you have to be a city official. The MAD
No,
board.
they're asking for somebody to be on the DAC. They have nobody from Norton,
Oh, they didn't ever put
No.
on the council person?
no. And so they're asking if any of us know anybody in Norton that might be interested, let Norton Council know.
Don't
And
they
I-
have to be a council person?
I would say too, there's never anyone from the city there in attendance. I encourage people to go to that meeting. I do get quite a few questions, and I always encourage people to experience it, because I mean, before I was on that committee, I knew nothing about mosquito spraying. It was something that just happened. So I do think it's something nice to attend, to learn about.
She and I were both there, and so was she.
Well, I was on
Yes.
the board. I wasn't on DAC, so I was on the board for a year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go back.
I'm just saying, if anybody knows somebody from the Norton area that might be interested, let Erica or
Yeah.
the mosquito abatement board know.
Yes. Yeah. All right, any other miscellaneous discussion? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:14 PM.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, November 7th, 2022, 6:14 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mrs. Angeloff, Mr. Jaber, and President Greer. All other council members are also present, and any guests are noted on my sheet. We have a request for legislation from Trevor Hunt, the planning director, requesting legislation to extend the boundary of the community reinvestment area, District Number 3. The extension will enable further economic growth through direct incentive tax exemptions for eligible businesses and property owners. Emergency wording is requested, and this is for the expansion of Topcraft. And there should be a match attached as well. Are there any questions about this piece of legislation? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at that map, and I know it's for the expansion of Topcraft. Is there any other businesses or properties that are being added outside of that, or is it just encompassing the business there?
So the letter we received is concerning Topcraft, but the expansion goes south just past Russell Avenue, also south end there. So there's vacant land owned by the Community Development Corporation. It includes PPG area, BWXT, and it extends up through to down Second Street, which has some vacant buildings that I know developers are looking at, and it extends to Worcester Road West on the side. So a large area there with potential new developments in the future. The one we know of is Topcraft, but the expansion, we don't want to come back for another time in there, in case of another development.
I got a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Given the new expansion, it's always good to incentivize, but do we have a dollar amount that we would be incentivizing or losing?
I'm not exactly sure what that amount is.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for this.
Thank you. In a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll find out.
Thank you, Mayor.
With the dollar, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we have an appointment, a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the reappointment of Mr. Bill Best to the City of Barberton's Planning Commission for a 4-year term, beginning immediately and ending 12/31/2027. He has been on the Planning Commission for several years and wishes to continue his service. The resume is attached. And Mr. Best has been on since 2004. I've worked with him personally, and I think he does a fantastic job. He's here every week. He knows what's going on in the city, and we appreciate everything that you do. So, are there any questions or comments? Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Chair. Under 305B, is there a specific date supposed to have the resumes in by? The ordinance? Mayor?
Yeah, I believe not until November, November.
October.
It says October?
And I can't submit them prior to October.
Okay. Is that, what's the charter say, Mr.?
Chair,
You got it?
Yep, go ahead.
the council rule 305B that Councilor Jaber is referring is, council shall consider appointments to all vacancies to boards and commissions in October of the expiring term year of said vacancy.
Did we make the
So
deadline?
is this an immediate start or commencing the beginning of next year would be the question, I think.
Beginning of next year.
Okay.
Yes,
Term event at the
term.
end of this year.
Yeah, the end of this year.
This would be an appointment for next year.
Okay, it just says beginning immediately, so I can see why there'd be confusion, so,
Apologize for that.
okay. All right, any other questions or comments?
Are you saying that these are late by a week?
No,
According to council rules, we can, if this is an expiring term, we can only consider them in October. So it would be up to the chair to suspend 305B to move forward with any appointments there that aren't already vacant.
well, we have fifth Monday, October 31st.
Yeah.
So we didn't meet that October. So we have to keep that in mind too.
We didn't meet October before that.
Because this is,
This was submitted in October.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were submitted in October.
yeah, look at the resumes.
yeah, both the letters are from October 31st.
October 19th is the application. And we didn't have a meeting last week. So that would have been probably brought up last week.
Just for clarification, it says shall be considered, meaning in committee in
Yeah,
October. You will have to, you can suspend that rule if you'd like.
That's,
yeah,
if you want to move forward since it's dated the 31st, it's just my opinion, I'm on the committee, that you
Yeah.
would just have to suspend 305B.
okay. I'd like to make a motion to
Yes, I will
suspend
second
Rule
that motion to
305B.
suspend 305.
Okay, thank you. In a second,
You can say,
I can, okay, yep, I'll second that then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, and can I have a motion to call for this?
I'll call for this.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
you can second.
I will second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that
Mr.
everybody?
Jaber, is that,
Is that 4 ayes?
Yeah,
did you?
that's
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You'll have to suspend it again.
That's fine. Okay, next up, we've got a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the reappointment of Mr. Don Wood to the city's planning commission for a 4-year term, beginning immediately and ending 12/31/2027. Mr. Wood has been on the planning commission for several years and wishes to continue his service. His resume application is attached as well. He's been serving for 14 years. He's very knowledgeable. Same situation with Mr. Best. I think he's a great asset and a good person to have on that commission. So that's where I'm at. Are there any comments about Mr. Wood? Okay. I'd like to move to suspend Rule 305B to allow for this.
I will make a motion.
Okay. And I will second. Those in favor? Aye.
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 Then can I have a motion to call for this?
I will make a
please?
motion to call for this.
Okay, thank you. And I will second. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay. Next up, we have a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the reappointment of Mrs. Paula Callio to the City of Barberton's Zoning Commission for a 6-year term, beginning immediately and ending 12/31 of 2029. She has been on the Zoning Commission for several years as well and wishes to continue her service. She has been on the board for 8 years, being on the chair of planning. She's very valuable to that committee. She does her homework. Every thing that comes across the table, she says, "Oh, I was out there yesterday." So she really does a great job.
She sure does.
So,
Suspend rule.
yep, I would like to motion to suspend 305B to allow for this appointment.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And I will second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and a motion to call, please.
I will make a motion.
Thank you. I will second that as well. All those in favor for Mrs. Callio?
Aye.
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 Mr. Tabor?
Mr. Riley.
Okay.
Is that an aye?
Yes, he said yes. Okay, for miscellaneous discussion, I did want to mention that I attended a meeting today for the active transportation. They're coming up with plans and things like that to improve safety, bicyclists, walking, stuff like that around town. One of my main concerns is around the schools. So that's something that they're working on, and they should have a plan put together soon for ideas for improvements around the city. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. Is there any other miscellaneous discussion from the committee?
Yes, Mrs.
Yeah.
Thompson.
Yeah.
Why isn't, in Ward 3, the B&W, why is that excluded on the map,
On that CRA map.
CRA map?
I'll have to check, there may be an existing one. There's some back and forth, there's some goofy rules. If you have a CRA prior to 1994, there may be one there, I'm not sure. I'll have to check.
You'll get us an answer?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Yes, yes.
I think we did that.
You think we already did that
All of
before?
our agreements.
Okay.
Mr. Heidi?
Long time ago?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh.
Mr. Mayor, if the former B&W complex is not already have one, how easy is it to change this proposed boundary?
Well, it comes in front of this body, and then there's paperwork at the state level, the state and county level. There's some work that goes into it. But I'll get an answer to you hopefully by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Other council members? Gallery? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Mrs. Angela,
I will second that, ma'am.
thank you.
My voice got better.
Adjourn at 6:26.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Next up is a special city utilities with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call this special city utilities meeting to order. We're here in Council Chambers. It is 6:27. All members are present. We received a letter from Todd Cruz, Director of Public Utilities, requesting legislation to enter into a contract with Vanderveer Chevrolet to not exceed the amount of $89,604 for the purchase of a new 2022 Chevy Silverado 5500 dump truck. Vanderveer quoted the lowest of 3 quotes. Emergency wording and one reading is requested to hold this price. This is 10% over what they did in case.
Yeah, so dollar figure that is on there includes the 10% contingency, so it will not exceed that 89,000.
We're asking for this to be this way so that if they cancel that, we don't have to come back to council to go up to the 89. I believe the first price is like 85.
81,
81.
Yes, is what Vanderveer quoted. We had a quote of 81, 83, and 85. Vanderveer being the lowest, but what we ran into in the past is they canceled the 2022 order, and then said, well, for $5,000 more, we'll put you in a 2023. So again, it's just, the contingency is to help us procure a truck that's sooner than later than having to come again back to council. So,
Are there any remarks about this? Anybody not understand? I mean, it's better for us to have that so that they can move forward than to have to come back to us and go through 3 weeks. This truck will be replacing one.
so this truck, yes, we'll be replacing a truck that will then be,
Transferred to
yes,
parks.
it will be sent to parks to be utilized there. So it is, the truck that's going to parks has been depreciated and will become, I believe, the chipper truck for the new wood chipper. So this way they don't have to take a truck and hook it, tear it down, use it for something else, hook it back up, put the box back on, change the chips, that kind of thing. So it'll help them out too.
I'll make a motion to call
Okay.
for this.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We are adjourned at 6:30.
Thank you, Mrs. Cover. Next up is Finance Personnel with Mr. Heddick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel, it is Monday, November 7th, 2022, 6:30 in council chambers. The committee is present, which consists of Councilors Coburn, Thompson, President Greer, and myself as chair. All others noted. First request for legislation, a letter from Rebecca Delbeck, Chief Probation Officer of the Barberton Municipal Court, requesting legislation authorizing payment to Metro Divisional Transit Authority in the amount of $3,006.25 for an invoice dated September 6, 2022 for bus passes, the 31-day. Emergency wording is requested. Is there any comments on that from the committee? From the body? From the gallery? Pretty straightforward. Do I have a motion to call for this? Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Next is a letter from Director Flaker, Finance Director, requesting authorization to execute and deliver a lease purchase agreement with Huntington Public Capital Corporation, Huntington National Bank, to finance the acquisition of 2022 Nissan Rogue at a cost of $22,035. Emergency wording and one reading requested. Director, any comment?
It's for the planning department. They plan on using CDBG funds for this vehicle. They leased the vehicle before using CDBG funds about 5 years ago, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. They entered into a lease. That lease came to full term. It was about a buyout. Building department bought the vehicle out for $1. So, other than that, the use of the vehicle, any questions like that, you would have to contact the planning department. Basically, what I would have on the vehicle.
Mr. Mayor?
So CDBG rules prohibit the purchase of a vehicle with CDBG money, but you can lease it. And as Director Flaker said, at the end of the lease, you can sell it to a department within, once it's, the lease is over, for $1. So that's one way we've improved our fleet. This vehicle will be used for planning and CDBG activities only. You lease it for the rules, which falls under that administrative fund. And then at the end, we can kick it into another department if we so want to.
Any from the committee?
Can I have, oh,
Counselor?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you might know, what exactly is it used for? Like, why does the planning department need a vehicle?
So they go on a lot of conferences. We belong to a lot of organizations that have meetings out of the city. Whether they're traveling to go look at a piece of property, whether they're going to put up a notice, zoning change, and put up a notice on the property. There's a lot of reasons that we use it to go look at the property. We've done this as far as I can remember.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that they're currently sharing that vehicle with the building department? Okay. Would it be out of the question to ask that employees log their miles for local trips when they go to meetings and stuff like that, as opposed to purchasing a vehicle? Or maybe if there's a longer trip, an extended period of time, maybe they could rent a car through the city? Or I'm just thinking financially, does it make sense to?
I don't know if it makes sense to rent a vehicle to go on an extended trip. That's why we pass this vehicle to the building department while leasing it on strictly planning.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Mayor? How does that lease, after the lease is over, isn't there a purchase price?
No, the total purchase, it's basically like rent to own.
Oh, okay,
but
okay,
it's
I
called
got
a
you.
lease.
I know a regular lease, after the lease is over, you still owe.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of our leases, they're lease purchases, so it's basically buying the vehicle.
You're buying it, it's
but
just another term.
It's technically a lease, from the debt service side of things, it's a lease. Sometimes there is a buyout, as I stated before, of $1, a lot of these banks put in their contract for you to own the vehicle, but that's usually what, but most of the time, they don't even include a dollar buyout. It's usually just after the lease is up, the city owns the vehicle.
Counselor?
What happens if you go over your mileage? Who pays for it?
So
There is
it's,
no-
yeah, it's not a typical lease.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
It's not a lease for like, what, personal purposes.
Oh, okay,
Would
good.
go to a dealership.
Great.
So we're basically buying it, what we're paying over X number of years.
Okay.
But in CDBG world, we're leasing it.
Okay. Okay.
Counselor?
And there is a lot of road traveling. You know, when they get a call, they have to go out, they use their own cars, that type thing. So there is a lot of traveling. Building department, you know, they're out all the time. Planning department, maybe that's a bad comparison to apples to oranges, but there's a lot of travel, you know, that they have to go out and meet people and things like that. And to tell you the truth, it's safer. It's safer when they have a car that's marked city, has city plates on it, when they're putting up a sign that says a public notice, than it is if you have your own personal car and parked and putting up a sign. So it is safer for all departments in general.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Finance Director, with doing a lease purchase agreement instead of just buying outright, do we get a better warranty or better insurance rate on that, or is it a non-factor for both?
Well, to go back, CDBG funds can't be used to purchase a vehicle.
Right.
So, the only way for planning to do this using CDBG funds is through a lease. There is no benefit for insurance or anything like that. I mean, buying a vehicle outright is always a better option if you have the cash available because you're not paying the interest rates. So whenever we do have the extra cash to pay for a vehicle, it's always best to buy it outright, right from the get-go, than leasing it over 3, 4, 5 years, depending on the type of vehicle.
Thank you. Counselor?
Again, the CDBG funds, you can only lease a car. So they lease the car, but it's beneficial in our rolling stock because that car then can be bought by other departments. So using CDBG funds for the lease and then turning that car over for another department to use for another 10 years, that's a plus. I mean, that's how we can purchase these cars. So, and that fulfills that rolling stock that's getting older and older. So they can only use those funds for leases, but then the building department or utilities or another department, they benefit from that by getting that car.
My curiosity came because I lease vehicles myself, and the warranty is always better, and sometimes the insurance, you get a better rate for a lease. That was my main curiosity there, if that had an extra perk to it or if it was a non-factor whatsoever. Just because I obviously don't do lease purchase agreements, but I get better benefits with a lease than buying outright. Any other comments? Mr. President?
Thank you, Chair. I just got 2 questions. How long ago was the old lease up? Like, how long have they not had their own vehicle?
Was it 2 or 3 years ago? The lease was up. I want to say, I don't know why, but I want to say 2019 or 2020 is sticking out to me.
Okay. And my follow-up question is more for a clarification question. The $68,000, this money can't be reallocated, shifted to budgeting to cover down for that loss?
No, that $68,000 for that finding that HUD found, that was already reimbursed back to HUD, so our only option was to pay it back from what I was told, so.
And the reason we didn't go after another vehicle back in 2020, 2021-ish, that was the height of the pandemic. Dealerships were closed, banks were closed. I mean, everything was kind of crazy. And we had all the money from CARES Act was coming into the department. We had some new employees up there, so trying to get them trained on everything. And then there's a strict time frame to use the CARES Act money. So on the priority list, it was making the best use of the CARES Act money at the time versus worrying about a vehicle that we're still having, until tonight, or the other week, very difficult to find a vehicle.
There any other comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next is a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the appointment of Christopher Macca to the City of Barberton Civil Service Commission for a 6-year term beginning immediately ending 12/31/2029 with the attached resume. Is there any comments here? Oh, Counselor.
The Macco name alone tells you that's a huge family, that very few of them have moved out of Barberton, they still live in Barberton, and it's nice to read the resume from Christopher that says he'd like to get involved in the city. That's a plus.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to suspend 305B?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this appointment?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving along, Director, care to entertain us with the finance report? The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Starting with the health insurance fund, the revenues for the month of October were little over 407,000. Expenditures just shy of 370,000. Gives us an unexpended fund balance of $1,680,000. Again, that means it's a net year-to-date of almost 261,000. Moving on to the income tax fund, our estimate for the month of October was just shy of 1 million. Our actuals came in at 1,345,000. Gives us over our estimate for the year of about 1.5 million. We have about 455,000 left to transfer from the income tax fund to the general fund. That was in the original budget. ordinance at the beginning of this year, which we will finish that transfer up this month. So once this month closes, all the funds will be transferred to the general fund from the income tax fund. Moving on to the statement of cash receipts and disbursements, there's a handful of funds in the negative. First one is the sports complex operating fund. I will be submitting, like I said, I'm not sure if I will send it in this month or I'll send it in the budget or the adjustment ordinance that I'll ask you guys for approval at the beginning of December. But I will be asking for a transfer to get that fund out of the negative before the end of this year, so we're in budgetary compliance. Next fund in the negative is the FEMA fund. That is the federal program for the flood mitigation for 14th, 15th, and Arthur. That we will be reimbursed once we expend the money and we turn in the reimbursement forms to FEMA. The next fund in the negative is the CDBG fund. That's the federal HUD grant. Once we make the expenditures, we can be reimbursed. And then that's all the funds in the negative. You'll notice that Fund 663 is out of the negative this month because of the chargebacks and everything. But I will forewarn you, there's only a $20,000 encumbrance outstanding. That encumbrance is not going to get us through the year. So that fund will go back in the negative temporarily, probably either this month or next month when we take out a PO for our fuel. So just to give you guys a heads up on that one. Comparing the last 3 months' activity, the general fund has stayed roughly the same for the past 3 months. Special revenue funds, you'll notice that took a dip. That took a dip mostly because of the encumbrances outstanding. You'll notice the encumbrances went up by about 2.5 million. A couple reasons of why. You have a couple of the projects using the ARPA funds. One, the concrete lids at the wastewater treatment plant that needs to be replaced, and the West Houston water line. Both of those encumbrances, or they took out POs this month for those. You also had the encumbrance for the out of the street capital fund for the road program for this year. So you had those 3 large encumbrances this month, which, like I said, increased the encumbrances by 2.5, and that's what brought that balance down in that fund. Enterprise funds has stayed roughly the same. All other funds is continuing on getting a positive about 400,000 each month in that, so that's continuing along there. Comparing last October to this October, the unencumbered cash balance of the general fund is up by about 8.9 million. That has to deal with the ARPA funds. Special revenue funds is actually down by about 5 million. A lot of that has to deal with the encumbrances outstanding, as I previously mentioned. But not only that, if you take a look at the net transfers, we're ahead of our transfers compared to last year. So last year at this time, we were just shy of $9 million transferred. This year we transferred almost 11 million so far. So those two things combined is what is bringing that unencumbered cash balance down compared to last year. Enterprise funds has stayed about the same, and the all other funds is up by about a little over 800,000 from last year. And that's all I have. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, Director. Do I have a motion for the approval?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Those in favor?
Aye.
Miscellaneous. Is there any from the committee? From the body? From the gallery? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:47.
Thank you, Mr. Heineck. That concludes our individual committee meetings for this evening. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and begin the committee of the whole meeting.
Come on, Mr. Griffin.
Second time I run into that today.
Yeah.
I was off today, so I would not have been here. Speaking of work, though, I finally got that perch back there. So if you want to order it, I finally got their
No,
good
did you
stuff.
got it? Okay.
Oh, you got it back?
Okay.
Yeah.
you got
Okay.
it.
Finally got
Canada is not taking it from us.
Yeah.
That's just as bad.
We need a bigger one.
How you doing? Farm's doing well?
Aggravating me a little bit. But I got 60% of the every year.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there.
Almost get it to the year.
The other thing was trying to get a hold of you.
This is like, well,
So they tried to email you the press
I only got like 2 more seconds.
Yeah, I finally got it, but it was after I filed the story. I gave up and went on their website and extracted what information I could.
Hey, my bad. I sent an email right after the committee. I think just let you know if you've
That's
seen
I
that.
thought, because
Before I forgot. And just let you know I wouldn't apologize yet. My bad. I was writing it down like, oh man, I can't send emails too. So I give you a heads up.
I just don't enjoy the sun.
I had 4 or 5 residents reach out to me and they had their cars towed from the parking violations. I think it's 4 or 5 of them. Violations are violations, but the one on Orchard reached out to me. Literally moved that night, moved in, and got a ticket. Yeah. There was no warning because it was right after the first beginning of the year. I think it would help out for the webpage, the city, and also maybe on the city of Barberton page. It's not on there, the city of Barberton page. He said he looked for it on the city of Barberton page. That's where he's on Now he's moving it. He said, no, he wasn't worried about $10 or $12, but he just didn't. Yeah, he just didn't know. That's why he was pretty heated.
Yeah, the warning season is.
Yeah. He understood. He's like, I know now. But he just didn't know. Of course, his landlord lives in a different state, like Michigan or Indiana. So maybe we give some kind of heads up, or just I don't know how we can do that.
Screaming.
Yeah.
Still won't be some corner.
No, of course not. They're doing a great job with leaf cleanup, though. The leaf cleanup, they're on it. They're moving good this year.
We're getting calls on the leaves. They want them down, the safety hazard down the road. So nobody's putting them back. I mean, the trees or the wind is putting them there because of all the trees. And we need a wood chipper. I've been getting called wood chipper. But we used to have one.
Oh, we just got one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I heard
that.
it. Yeah, I heard it. Yeah, some lady called me Saturday because we used to have one. Yeah.
For downloads and stuff.
Yeah.
And we may have, I don't know. Trevor had something pop up, so.
This thing that's kind of crazy.
Had to be that one.
You got next, somebody put the bomb.
Well, this is already called for. Everything is called for. We just got to read it. It's special for those concrete.
The parks and my utilities, just the parks.
No, thank you.
What years on just because they wanted it through anyways. If you want to talk your stuff. Throw a little wrench in there for you.
Your place is the only place I've been getting black and tan.
I know they've been out.
I know. I come out here.
All of these.
I've been taking care of you. They're out of cinch supplies. If you order, they'll take it off Monday. And they'll probably want to say, hey, they stop. Give me 10 of them. 20 of them. Because $13.99, $14.99, it's gone up.
Bread.
Bread, eggs now is $3.99.
You should buy from a farm.
Milk,
Go to a farm and buy it.
milk
I-
$4.99.
You can get milk from a farm. No, but you could. And get raw milk.
Use that special almond milk.
I actually use oat milk.
I was like, watching you say you're on.
It's healthy for you.
I thought of making my own oat milk, but it's like gross because it's not processed. Processed oat milk is way better.
You know how I get a city kid to drink some raw milk. I remember going to college.
Raw milk is so bad to drink.
Yes.
Like you get very sick. That's how you know how processed our milk is. Because if you actually drink milk, you're like dead.
I drank it down in Georgia. I used to go down there.
All right, we're going to begin. Where's Mr. Reddick? We're going to begin in 30 seconds. Please ensure your phones are on silent or off. Council members, ensure your microphones are turned on.
No. No.
No 7 o'clock today.
But does it make you more confident in your answer?
I can look at that clock. Wait a second.
Yeah, they kind of screwed me up.
Yeah, and it's.
I looked at my wife.
Wait a minute.
He said it's going to be a short meeting.
I saw it. It's going to be long.
These things are out of order and need to be reorganized.
You second guess
Yeah.
all the time, don't you?
He hates it.
All right, today is Monday, November 7th, 2022. This is a committee of the whole meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:54. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens addressing council. I didn't see any, but is there any?
No.
All right, thank you. Committee reports. Streets, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting Committee met this evening at 6:01. All members were present, all council members were present, and guests as noted. We have no new legislation, no pending legislation, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Angela. Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee met this evening at 6:14 here in council chambers. All members were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We had a request for legislation from Trevor Hunt, the planning director, requesting legislation to extend the boundary of the Community Reinvestment Area District Number 3. The extension will enable further economic growth through direct incentive tax exemptions for eligible businesses and property owners. Emergency wording is requested, and that is moving forward. We also had 3 requests for appointments. One for Mr. Bill Best to the Planning Commission for a 4-year term beginning immediately and ending 12/31/2027. Another for Mr. Don Wood to the Planning Commission for a 4-year term ending. Oh, okay. It says beginning immediately, but
That's a typo.
okay, ending in 2027. Another request for appointment for Mr. Don Wood, which would end 12/31/2027. And then the third request for reappointment for Mrs. Paula Callio to the Zoning Commission for 6 years, which would end 12/31/2029. We had some miscellaneous discussion about the CRA, as well as the active transportation plan that the city's been working on for quite some time. And we adjourned at 6:26. With that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Next up is City Utilities with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities had a special meeting this evening in council chambers. We met to vote on a letter from Todd Shreve, Director of Public Utilities, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Vanderveer Chevrolet to not exceed the amount of $89,694 for the purchase of a new 2022 Chevy Silverado 550 dump truck. Vanderveer quoted the lowest prices, and emergency wording and one reading was requested. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn. Public welfare and safety, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met on Monday, October the 24th. And we had a meeting attended by the whole committee, as well as all council members, and this is noted on my sheet. And all of, or most of, Planning Commission came that evening. We had one request for legislation. It was a letter from me, the Ward 6 council person, requesting legislation to amend Barberton Codified Ordinance Section 351.05, night parking of commercial recreational vehicles in residential districts. Emergency wording was requested, and we'll be voting on that next week. We already had changed this at the end of, oh gosh, I can't remember, I think it was the beginning of all of our terms, and we're already making some more amendments to make it more clear. There was no miscellaneous discussion, and we had no pending legislation, and with that, public welfare and safety will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on Monday, October 24th. All members present and other guests as noted. We had no requests for legislation and no miscellaneous discussion. We adjourn at 6:23. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Environmental Health and Social Services, Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Environmental Health and Social Services Committee met tonight in council chambers. All members were present. All others are noted. There was no new requested legislation. There was an appointment of Mary Jo Goss. Good. To sit on the Summit County Board of Health, representing the city of Barberton. That passed. There was no miscellaneous discussion. We did chat a little bit about the mosquito abatement. And we are adjourned at 6:14 p.m. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Parks, Recreation met October 24th, 6:03, council chambers. All council members were present, and also guests were noted. We had two requested legislations. I'm sorry, one. It was a letter from Don Patterson, Director, and Tammy Simmons, Assistant Director of Park Recreation, requesting legislation on behalf of the Barberton Active Adult Center, authorization to install the electric stove located in the YM building. Then we had two pending legislation that will be today's special meeting. And we have miscellaneous discussion. We talked about the trunk or treat and how good weekend for trick or treating. And we adjourned at 6:09, sir. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Finance and Personnel, Mr. Addy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel is calling for legislation authorizing payment to Metro Divisional Transit Authority in the amount of $3,006.25 for an invoice dated September 6, 2022 for 31-day bus passes. Emergency wording and one reading requested. Legislation authorizing to execute and deliver a lease purchase agreement with Huntington Public Capital Corporation, Huntington National Bank, to finance the acquisition of a 2022 Nissan Rogue at a cost of $22,035. Emergency wording, one reading requested. We're calling for the appointment of Christopher Macco to the City of Barberton Civil Service Commission for a 6-year term beginning next year. and we move forward the acceptance of the finance report. That I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Huddick. That concludes our committee reports. Is there anything from council members? Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder, tomorrow is voting. Make sure you tell all your friends and family members, your neighbors, everybody involved to go voting. And as council members, you probably get at least 10, 15 calls. Just keep your phone next to you. Where do I vote? I got a lot of those calls last year. And I used your app and also last year, and also just going to Summit County Board of Elections app. Just, put the address in or the last name. It'll tell you where to go. I had a couple people reach out to me about Ward 1. They're still voting their location at the
Christian Healthcare Ministries.
there because they're doing construction. So if anybody in Ward 1 reaches out to you guys, it's still same location. And with that, I pass, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaber. Is there anything else from council members?
Mr.
Sorry.
I just have one thing. In the third ward, we had a Barberton family that was burnt out. You know about the Hooks family? They lost almost everything they had. And it is a GoFundMe, which is legitimate on Facebook there. And I think Mr. Jaber is accepting
Yes, donations. We had a couple people today stop by and brought some clothing and stuff. like that.
clothing and stuff. If somebody just wanted to give out something, donate it, other than money.
Do you have sizes and everything that they need?
Is there children?
No,
No.
no. The youngest one, I think he's going to graduate soon, or he graduated
Yes.
last year or something.
Okay.
Tim, no small. He last year he graduated.
Thankfully,
so-
nobody was hurt though. so-
Right, nobody was hurt. Yeah, there's no small children or they're just.
If you can,
I'll message you.
okay, thank you.
I'll ask for sizes.
Okay.
Go from there. Thank you.
And she works at Barberton. She does work for the schools. Yes.
Is there anything else? Thank you, Mr. Jaber, for the voting information. Again, send everybody to the Summit County Board of Elections website, the voter lookup, and it has all the current information. Friday is Veterans Day, so I'm sure I can speak on behalf of council. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all the veterans, past and present. And with that, I don't have anything, Mayor.
Mr. President. In addition to the voting, Community Healthcare Ministries also has a large section of Ward 2 as well. So, and kind of clarification on the appointments. So Bill Best, Don Wood, Paula Callio, and Carrie Jo Goss would start January 1st. Chris Macco would start immediately. But, if you want this in a written form, I can do this, but I would request the city council change the rules surrounding council appointments. So if council can only have appointments submitted or considered during the month of October, this sticks the administration between a rock and a hard place. So last year was the first year of that rule. I submitted a request to be considered prior to October. They had to sit. This year, we had the conversation we had today. So at times, there's a time factor for hearing back from the candidate and to get the application back in my office from them. So sometimes that can take quite a bit of time. And then to send the request to council. What if the candidate isn't sure that they want to sit on a board, or they don't return their application in time? What if city council doesn't approve the candidate, and now the administration can't fulfill that seat, even though there's 2 months left in the year? Like civil service, some boards and commissions have specific requirements on the background of the individual, so it may not be that we're putting up, so it may not be so easy to find somebody that meets those requirements that wants to sit on the board. Usually when I discuss sitting on a board or commission with new members, they want to know, well, what does it entail? So, they have the charter, we talk about it, and then they want to know, well, what really goes on? How often do we meet? All these things. Let me consider it. Let me go talk to my significant other. Let me talk to my family. So all that takes time. Again, boards and commissions, civil service, you have to have so many Democrats, so many Republicans. Well, finding someone that meets the requirements, you may not be able to do that in a time-efficient manner. I would request that the rules be changed to allow consideration after September. So October, November, December. If it's immediate, obviously that's different because there's a need at that time. But if we're looking at reappointing someone to fulfill, starting in January, having some flexibility so we can get in touch with people and get their application back and then get that to council. I'd hate to start the process in March, get applications from people who want to be reappointed and just sit on it. I mean, if that's what we have to do to start the process, or July or what have you, then we will. But it can be a lengthy process, and there could be some things that kind of hold the administration between a rock and a hard place. So I request that, and I can put that in more formal written letter if that's okay. Change for Change will be on Friday, November 18th at the Green Diamond, benefiting Reynolds Classic and Stroke Awareness. We've always held this benefactor, Reynolds Classic, at the Green Diamond, so always a great turnout. As mentioned earlier, leaf season and leaf pickup has started. The crews are hard at work, but as we found out this past weekend, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. With the wind blowing the leaves everywhere. So as mentioned earlier, if leaves are remaining after the crews have already been through, and weather permits, our crews will be back through. And in some cases, we'll have we won't get to everything on a second time. And maybe you have a crazy day in January or February where it's nice and warm out, there's no snow, we can send a crew out to pick up leaves. So just because we get into the typical snowy months doesn't mean that we're done picking up leaves. In addition, you may have seen the weather forecast this morning from Friday to Saturday. They're calling for a 20+ degree drop in temperature. So I think sometimes the public feels that we have multiple trucks. Well, we have a set of trucks that are picking up leaves, they're hauling asphalt and cold patch, they're getting ready and salting the streets and plowing the streets. So it takes time to convert them from one operation to another. Our crews do a great job. But drastic swings in temperature and Mother Nature typically always win. So, the Director of the Department of Development, Lydia Mahalik, was in town last week as part of our efforts for Manufacturing Month. She addressed the Mayor's Association, that includes Stark, Summit, and Portage County, in the morning. She then came here to Barberton and met with various business leaders in a roundtable discussion, and then concluded the day by going to the high school and tour of all the different tech programs offered at the high school. Her department at the state is in charge of a lot of different sub-projects or programs. So the big ones that really affect us are tech programs for high school kids, workforce development, demolition funds, brownfield remediation, those types of things. So very important that we get in front of her, especially with all the ARPA money that has been filtered to the state that she is now overseeing through the application process. Last week, we had a ribbon cutting for Eurofins, a new business in town. They purchased one of the former DW buildings and have invested heavily into the building. This is the type of businesses that we need in town. They're essential to the positive movement that we're having here in town. So about 114 employees, a lot of PhD level employees. They do environmental testing for all industries. So really cool things that they do. We make use of them with some of our operation. They came from North Canton. We were able to get them up here. So it's a big win here for the city of Barberton. So, and then per ordinance, I will provide an update, as I did last year, on the rental registration. So we've been examining this. I'll do this next week, so it's in the minutes. But we've been examining this. I know I've talked to quite a few of you about improving and how things, the rental registration process, how things are going, what the outcomes are. So I'll provide that for next week and the plan moving forward. But if you have any questions, please, if you can get them to me by next week, that'd be great. And then as mentioned, Friday is Veterans Day. The building will be closed. So if you see a veteran, thank a veteran. Allow us to do what we're doing here tonight. And then as mentioned also, Councilman Jaber, tomorrow's election day. So weather's supposed to be nice. The temperature's already tipping down a little bit, but it's supposed to be fairly decent out. So, any questions? Yes.
Are we still meeting here on Thursday, the 17th?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and this is, probably doesn't make any difference, but why do we have a rule about October being the only month that you can nominate people for the boards and commissions?
That came up in 2020?
2021.
2021?
It was, council was backed up against the wall with appointments last minute, and we wanted to get them in prior.
I agree with you, though, it should be more than 1 month.
I mean, I understand, based on those conversations we had previously, set a timeframe to get things in. But to have it just 1 month, takes time to hear back sometimes from interested parties.
And I have to agree with you. Sometimes if it's a new candidate that wants to be on a board or commission, they'd like to go to a meeting. Meetings are once a month. So if they show interest in October and they miss that meeting, then it's November. And you'd be surprised how many of them say, well, I'm not sure, I'd like to see what's, what's going on and what I have to do and everything of that sort. So, and that usually was that was something that you would say, well, why don't you come to a meeting? And then you can understand what they do and how the voting process is and that type thing. So I have to agree because that's the 5th Monday. And it doesn't say that in the council rules, and we should do that on the 5th Monday, so.
And I think we all knew when council rules were being examined and discussed, and you should always look at those, always review them, because things are going to pop up that weren't, the intention wasn't there when they were first laid, right? So trying to see what obstacles you have and how to improve the rules, nothing wrong with that. So kind of gave you my 2 cents. I'll put that on a more formal document. Something like that. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. With nothing else, this meeting is adjourned at 7:14 p.m. And we will take it. Is council good to go into a legislative meeting?
We're good.
All right. I was going to take a break, but I got the evil eye. I was looking in that vicinity. I'm not saying anything. All right, as mentioned earlier today, we will be having a special legislative meeting, Barberton City Council. So today is Monday, November 7th, 2022. This is a special legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 7:15 p.m. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mrs. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
President Griffin.
Present. Thank you. We will roll right into second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 145-2022, presented by Mr. Jaber. Title, enter into contract Parent Asphalt and Concrete. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Parent Asphalt and Contract in the amount of $36,500 to tear out the existing tennis courts and install a new tennis court at Brightenstein Park and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the rule as required by Section 5.0 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. Is there a second, Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I second this, these 2 readings, did the issue that forced it to be this be resolved?
Correct. In my understanding,
Yes.
talking with Mrs. Miller, everything was good to go.
Yes, sir.
Then I will second Councilor Jaber's motion on suspension.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Motion was made by Mr. Jaber and seconded by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Bailey.
Yes.
Mrs. Fry.
Yes.
Mrs. Angela.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn.
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of ordinance number 145-2022.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Jaber and second by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 145-2022. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 146-2022, presented by Mr. Jaber. Title, enter into contract Paragon Concrete, an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Paragon Concrete in the amount of $28,600 to tear out the existing basketball court and install a new court and basketball hoops at McCafferty Park and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Motion to suspend. Mr.
Thank you,
Jaber.
Mr. President. I move the rule as required by Section 5.0 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Jaber's motion on suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Jaber and second by Mr. Heidick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Mrs. Angela.
Not a remark, I have a question. Apparently, this had to be done this week and not next week and not last week. Is it because of the weather that they can get started on the courts? Yes.
Yes, because of the weather and also for a grant. We'd have to have it done by next month. It was a grant that was approved last year. I mean, the year before Mr. Patterson took in office.
Okay, that would be the McCaffrey Park. That was a limitless grant that I brought up last week. Is that, and nobody seemed, or I don't know if they said that that wasn't part of it, because I know that there was money left over in that grant.
Right.
So, so that's what we're doing here. You had to, I mean, you know, we didn't vote on last week, we're voting on this week. Could we not vote on it next week? We had to have special legislation.
Yes, because, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Fuller.
The 3,000 was left from the limitless, and the other 25 is what we,
Was from the,
from the ODNR. And we had to get a clarification, but all of this needs to be completed by December 31st, or we lose the grant money.
And we will
And
get
we don't want to
reimbursed.
have to pay that back.
money.
But it's an
That wasn't
ODNR.
explained last week, so.
No, that was the confusion last week
Correct.
was,
And Mr. Patterson would have been here today, but they're getting ready for the voting at the YMCA. So he had to be there at 6:30, so he apologized for not being here tonight.
I kind of figured it had to do something with grant money because we had to vote on it today, and why couldn't we vote on it next week at our regular legislation meeting? But, and that's perfectly fine. I just wanted
Yep.
clarification because I didn't get one.
Yeah, and on top of that, when I found out about the issue with everything, and I found out that weather played a role too as well with weather,
Yes.
then I decided to call the special for this
Yes,
week
yes.
because there was some technicalities and the contractor kind of needs paid. So. Is there any other remarks about this piece of legislation or the suspension? Sorry. All right, clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 146-2022.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Jaber and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 146-2022. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
yes,
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Angela?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion for adoption carries. With nothing else, and this being a special meeting, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mrs. Thompson?
I'll second.
Thank you. It was moved by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 7:22 PM. Thank
Why
you.
are we suspending if it's a second reading?
It's emergency, because emergency reading. It's emergency reading. You can do emergency reading first and then second.
Oh, I was very confused as to why we were suspending it. Okay. Great.
It's just in the garage.
Oh, okay.
Look at you with all of the knowledge tonight.
Try to do my job the best I can, man.
You're usually not right, but good job for tonight.